You're on a GLP-1, but now you're wondering, how do I manage my side effects? What do I eat to stay strong? Because reaching your weight loss goals can take more than meds. That's where Weight Watchers Med Plus comes in. Get access to trusted experts, food plans that work with your body, and habit coaching to keep you on track. Plus access to GLP-1 medication. Get started at WeightWatchers.com. All medical services are provided through our affiliated medical group, Weight Watchers Clinic. Medications require eligibility and prescription. Individual results may vary. See site for more details.
With Money podcast.
Hello and welcome to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Dunn, and with me today is Ben Greene. Do you want to tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Heck yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I am Ben Greene. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a trans man, trans joy advocate. I lived in Missouri for a while. Now I live in California. Wasn't actually politically motivated. It's for my wife's job. I write the Substack Good Queer News, which is about reasons to be hopeful and ways we can use joy to fight for a world worth living in. I wrote a book for parents of trans kids. I travel around the world teaching about trans rights. I want to build a world that's better, and I will not stop until it is done.
Okay, so I subscribe to a lot of Substacks, and they're all news, and they're all negative. And then I get into I go into my inbox in the morning, and there's yours sort of in the sandwiched between horrors.
Yeah.
So can you talk about why you started Good Queer News?
I started getting involved in politics when I was living in Missouri in 2023. I started going to the state capitol every single week. Like, I was in the shit, and I was expecting to feel worse as I got more involved, but I found that we would have these amazing victories that we fought for. We would show up to the Capitol. There'd be 250 people in support of the trans community and 4 people there against us. It was amazing. And we would defeat bills. We would get bills that we were proud of through. And the people that weren't involved in my life were progressively feeling worse and worse and worse and more disempowered and more hopeless. And I realized that all these amazing things that were happening weren't making it to people who weren't on the ground in the room where that was happening. So I started sharing that with some of my friends, just casually. I would say, hey, here's my running list of good queer news. Here are all the amazing stories that you haven't heard about. And the more time I spent doing that, the more my friends were like, can I send this to somebody? Would you post this online? And finally, my friends had been telling me, you've got to post it. You've got to post it. I was like, okay, I'm going to post it. And so I posted it online, and it really took off. And now it has really crystallized how important it is. You know, there's this expression I have, which is that your despair is someone else's business model. This feeling of hopelessness, of disempowerment, of isolation isn't an inevitability that your body understands how terrible it is. That feeling is manufactured by an industry with your despair as a perk for their bottom line. The worse you feel, the less you try, the less you talk to people, the more time you spend online watching advertisements, fighting with people in the comments, making money for the platform. It's not a coincidence that the people who are telling you it's time to give up are the ones who have the most to gain from you giving up. Hope is a very radical political choice. I love choosing joy because there's so much out there. It's just not profitable to share. And that's stupid. So that's why I do Good Queer News, because there is good stuff happening.
Whoa, that was really great. Because I get kind of annoyed with things that are like trans joy is resistance, because I worry that it creates a situation where you think, I don't have to do anything.
Yes.
So can you say more about how maybe I'm wrong about that?
You're not wrong about that. A lot of people use the phrase trans joy is resistant as a cop-out. They mean I'm going to brunch and that's enough. And really, a lot of times that's a thinly veiled bandage over despair. A lot of people are in this place of despair. They feel genuinely like everything is horrible, the world is ending, the final days are ticking by. And when we say trans joy is resistant, in response to that, we tell ourselves the world is ending, so the least I can do is be joyful even though they want me to be sad, and I'll wait out the end of days. Here we are at the at the finish line, we have lost and the score is settled. So sometimes people use that because they are deeply despairing or because they want to feel okay about checking out and saying, I can't look at this. I don't want to do anything. I think there's a critical difference between happiness and joy. Those are different things. When a lot of people catchily, pithy say joy is resistance, they mean happiness, which is a general positive state based on circumstances. I'm eating an ice cream cone, I'm at brunch with my friends, I'm seeing a musical. That's happiness. Happiness is wonderful. Happiness is not resistant.
Yeah.
Joy is gathering together, is an attitude that defies circumstances. So when I go to the Missouri State Capitol, I'm not happy, but I'm joyful because I choose to carpool instead of driving by myself. So I'm not sitting and stewing about how terrible I feel. I'm joyful because I choose to listen to trans artists the whole time I drive to be reminded of the magic of my community. I'm joyful because I can give my testimony. I can be empowered. I can remind myself I have a story that's worth telling and I can force them to listen to it. And then I can walk out of that hearing room, gather together with my community. We can order 75 pizzas to our favorite legislator's office, and I can do tarot readings for all of the kids who are there who need help decompressing after their own testimonies. I can choose joy even when I am not happy. Joy is resistance, and more particularly, joy is the energy that fuels our resistance. It's not the entire thing. Joy is what gives me the ability to keep going, the ability to keep doing difficult things, the ability to dream of something better and to paint a picture of a world that other people want to be a part of. Joy is one incredibly important piece of a strategic puzzle, but happiness isn't resistant. We need it. We need to make space for peace, for happiness, for connection, but that's not the resistance. That's how we refuel and heal to come back and joyfully resist.
I admire it so much because I don't subscribe to anything else that is so positive. But how do you find the things to report on? Because it's not just trans stuff, it's all queer stuff.
Yeah. So there are a couple of sources that I like. Me and KB Brookins, who runs the Instagram and Substack Trans News That Doesn't Suck. We are we're such homies. So we'll text each other all the time, be like, this article is better suited for yours. Like, you should post that here. We repost each other's stuff all the time. So I look for other people that are looking for good news. At this point, I've developed a reputation for wanting good news, so people will send it to me. They'll say, we just had this in this state legislature. We just had that happen. I will look up what's going on in different state legislatures. And so as an example, right now, something I'm keenly aware of is a lot of state legislatures are ending their session. We're starting to see our success rates of which sessions are ending with how many bills they've passed. So Georgia just ended. We defeated every anti-LGBTQ bill in Georgia. That wasn't an accident. That came because we fought for that, because 2,500 people called, visited, testified, showed up, told their legislators, this isn't what I want you focusing on. And if you focus on it, that's fine. You're up for re-election. I'll be watching. So I think some of it is looking at those state legislatures. But the big thing for me is I don't have a lot of patience for people who engage with trans rights as a hobby. And by that, I don't mean that they don't care as much. I mean that they love to sit and debate the theory of it without taking any action. The people that I want to listen to are the ones on the ground doing the work, the people who are in the state houses. So I'm on the mailing list, mostly not of a lot of trans political theorists, but of trans rights organizations that are doing work that I believe in. So organizations like Transformations Kansas City, an organization of Black trans women doing amazing work in the Midwest and the Heartland. PFLAG, an organization I do a lot of work with, of parents of trans and queer people and their advocacy for their loved ones. All kinds of grassroots people actually doing the work. Oh, Future is another one, Families United for Trans Rights. It's an organization of parents and grandparents of trans kids helping get trans candidates elected. They helped run Sarah McBride's campaign, Precious Brady Davis. They work with advocates for trans equality a lot. They help build trans power. That's great. So I find the victories by finding the people who are fighting for those win.
Can you talk about some recent ones that were really great?
Yeah. Okay. So my list is not as up to date as normal because I've been traveling. I was in Lithuania for a week and a half giving speeches about trans rights all over the country. But the biggest one, this court order about RFK. I am leaping with joy about this court order. Basically, gender affirming care world, RFK, loser. In case the audio didn't come through quite right, I made a fart noise and a big thumbs down and stuck my tongue out. Audio description. We don't like RFK. And he doesn't want there to be gender affirming care because he wants Trump to like him so that, whatever, so that they can kiss later. I don't know. So he doesn't want gender affirming care. So the way he tried to do that is by saying for any hospital, if you see any transgender minor patients and give them gender affirming care, we'll cut off your entire Medicare funding.
Okay.
If a hospital lost their Medicare funding, they'd need to close in 5 days. So a lot of hospitals that are ending their care, they have reason to be scared, right? They're being put in a horrible situation where they will literally lights off, ventilators unplugged, every kid out of that hospital. It's an impossible position they're put in. Now,
Jesus.
He didn't officially make that threat. He said, I'm making this declaration, and at some point, I'm going to make a rule about it, so you better watch out. So all he did is write this letter, but it was a weighty threat, and a lot of hospitals we saw in blue states with protected care started closing their center. Now, immediately, 19 attorney generals sued about that letter, which is a win on its own. Whether or not they win, the fact that 19 of the most powerful attorney generals who know that this is a topic that is very polarizing, that is often being weaponized against Democratic and liberal candidates, attorney generals consistently have been going to bat for trans kids number one, more than anybody else. State attorney generals have been going so hard. So immediately, 19 attorney generals sue RFK, say, you can't write that letter. That is not right. And we got a ruling a couple weeks ago where the judge said, yeah, I hated that, and I'm going to let you know just how much I hated it soon. Well, she just let us know. In a 49-page ruling, this judge wrote, not only was that letter totally unprofessional, inappropriate, unconstitutional, illegal, not only is that letter unenforceable, but he cannot try that again. She said, you are specifically constitutionally not allowed to threaten Medicare funding, funds that have already been promised to these hospitals. You can't take it back. You do not have that power. Do not try this shit again. Stop it. She smacked him in the head and told him, sit down, shut up, and go away. No one wants to hear what you have to say about this. And he said, it's about my freedom of speech. And she said, that is disrespectful to this court, to your office, to the concept of freedom of speech. We all know that is not what this is about. It's not your freedom of speech. It is a misuse of your power. And to quote, she said, unserious leaders are unsafe.
Unserious.
Okay. So that letter was ruled totally unenforceable. He's not allowed to attack the Medicare funding through the routes he was trying to. Again, already 2 hospitals have reopened their care in Minnesota. Colorado is pushing for the same. California is pushing for the same. We are seeing a rapid restoration of care. It won't be everywhere. It won't be immediate. But we now have way more ammo to start pushing back on these hospital systems to say, hey, I know that you were worried about this threat. I was too. The threat isn't here anymore. It's time to bring this care back. And so we're seeing attorney generals now push those hospitals through legal means, through conversational means. So that's a huge win we've been seeing. The Georgia win as well was really phenomenal. We also internationally, this is the last one, and then we can go back to the rest of the interview. There's this big UN group called the UN's Commission on Women. I forget the exact formal title, but basically the US came in and being stupid idiots like we often are, we said we need to change the definition of women. And the number one threat to women in this world is transgender agenda and gender ideology. And we need to accept and identify this as a threat. And everybody knew the US was going to do that. Of course, we were going to say that. So the EU voted in advance. They agreed completely that trans women are women. And our stance going into this meeting will be that when we talk about fairness and safety for women and girls, that includes transgender women. So EU voted on that. Then we had this commission meeting and the US came in and they were like, okay, everybody, it's time to talk about the real problems for women and girls. And we're putting this up for a vote. And I think there was like one country that sided with the US and every single other country was like, literally, shut up. There are actual problems for women and girls. This isn't it. You are the problem for women and girls. Stop it. And so they had this amazing vote. Again, the UN Commission on I wish I remembered their entire title, but essentially for fairness and safety for women and girls, voted to affirm that trans women are women and deserving of safety and support like any other women and not stooping to the US's nonsense. So I know it feels like everyone is angry and getting more hateful, but that is not actually what is happening on the ground. And there are so many people who are fighting for safety for all women, for all people, for all children. There is good news happening.
Oh, you don't have to go. This is part of the interview. Like this is what I want people to hear about, because I do think that you're right in the beginning. I mean, I know you're right about the trafficking in bad news and how that overwhelm is meant to stop people from doing anything. I've seen it in my own work. I made a video calling out a city council member who I do think is full of shit, but I made a video saying that she wasn't being strong enough about the ways in which DHS and ICE attack the protesters downtown in Los Angeles. Her staffer went apeshit in my comments, which was extremely funny. Ooh. But then, like 2 days later, she put forward this thing about like protecting protesters. And I felt like, oh, wow. I don't know if I did it, but I think
you contributed to that.
She kind of used a lot of my language. So then I made a video saying like, hey, this happened, and it doesn't get as much attention, but I didn't do it for that. I did it so that she would see that I was saying thank you, so that it would motivate her to do more, because I think you have to make also videos that are saying like, oh, this person actually did do it.
Absolutely. We can't just be angry. If I'm dreaming of a world that is joyful, that has a different approach to accountability, that has a different approach to community, I can't rage my way into that world. Rage will be part of it. Rage will be a critical, inciting thing. But if I want a world where people are excited to build what I want to build, that has to include celebrating and thanking people for trying. Sometimes somebody gets a pat on the head for using my pronouns for the first time. Did it take too long to start? Sure. Am I thrilled you are trying? Yes. And that's the big thing I remind myself constantly. Even if the best day was yesterday, the second best day is today. Don't punish somebody for starting. If we want them to start, reward when they start. I know, don't applaud mediocrity. Okay. And we want to encourage someone, punishing somebody for their progress is not going to make them progress faster and further. In the beginning, shame helps, but it'll only carry us so far.
Yeah, and diversity of tactics, and people have different ways of doing things, for sure. A lot of times I go into city council or other cities, city councils, different planning commissions and stuff, and I'm like, I lead with, you don't want to be here, and I don't want to be here. Like, I think there's an element of saying, thank you for voting against this. This is who I'm speaking to when I speak to the council. Because it is interesting. It feels like gentle parenting a toddler when you're kind of talking to a legislator with their ego. It's so wild to be like, good job, you did good job, and now you do better job. Because I'm often like, we pay these people to do this work. It's fully insane.
Yes.
But you do have to, like you said, if their constituents are excited about something, they will feel more comfort. Like when you talked about how there was 2,000 people there to support trans rights and only 4 against trans rights at the Missouri, I think you said the Missouri legislature.
Yeah, the Missouri legislature would have hundreds in support and a handful, if any, in opposition.
Yeah, so I think that is something with optics that needs to be stressed, because when you only see things online, you really see bots a lot of the time. Not to disregard transphobia, but my friends and I went to Sacramento to try to talk to Gavin Newsom, and there were comments on both sides, and I noticed that a lot of the comments that were against what we had done, similar profile pictures, similar language, so it looked like there was a lot more hatred against us, but when I dug deep into it, they weren't real profiles.
Okay, here's I'm ready to get on my soapbox. Brace,
do it.
Strap in. Have you heard of the Internet Research Agency? The Internet Research Agency was created by Russia in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. People talk a lot about like, oh, Russia interfered with our election. Most people assume that meant like just putting votes on the scales. They don't really know what that was. The Internet Research Agency was basically created to sow division and distrust between American citizens. So they created each person who would show up to work each day was assigned between 20 and 100 fake profiles and given a list of keywords and topics to talk about that day and to start fights about. Often they were things like, in particular, targeting trans rights, voting rights, and racial equity in the United States. They were critically posting on both sides. There was a post format that they invented. You might have seen the post format looks a little something like this. If you don't believe that we should listen to Black women, that trans rights are human rights, and that no one needs a gun, get off my page. It's not worth talking to me. Just block yourself. That format that we see constantly that says, these are my values, if you don't agree, block me, was not created by Americans. That was created by Russians, literally teaching us to hate each other. Most of the popular Russian accounts were leftists, not conservatives. So they were training us to have something called civic disdain, this idea that it is not even worth it to look at each other. I have nothing in common with you. That feeling is manufactured. And they took that into the real world. They created Facebook groups. Often they would pick a small town in a conservative area. They did this in Texas. They made one Facebook group that was called Black Matters, and it had millions of people in it. It was run by totally Russian bots, and not bots, Russian real people. And they had one that was like a Back the Blue group, and they would plan protests of each other in a city. So there was one city, they had a protest for Muslim residents of the city called like, protect and affirm Muslim dignity, and one protest that said take Texas back for Muslims. Both Facebook events planned and originally populated by Russian fake accounts, and then real people showed up. Thousands of people came to this aggressive, hateful protest because they thought it was the big thing everybody was doing that was literally manufactured by the Internet Research Agency. That feeling that we have that I need to block every Trump supporter, that everyone is terrible, that immediate black and white binary of you're with me or against me, you're good or you're bad, manufactured. Now in the age of AI, the number of bots meant to convince you it's not worth talking to anybody is everywhere. It is so important we recognize that it is worth it to talk to each other. And when you leave the internet, most people are not like the people on the internet. Most of my work takes me to red states and rural areas. In March, I spent a week and a half traveling around rural Iowa, talking to farmers and pastors and grandparents and all sorts of people that most of the people in my life in California thought I was genuinely crazy for going to Iowa. They were like, why would you do that? What's in Iowa? Good people are in Iowa who are gerrymandered. Right?
I am gooped and gagged.
Right?
Yeah, you're right in a lot of ways. At least with trans stuff, I have found people are either misinformed, like they truly think a thing that isn't true, or they don't care. Like they're like, do what you want with your body. I don't give a fuck. Like I have bigger problems.
Yeah, and they want to hear that we don't care either. I have family members who I fought with for years because they voted for Trump, and I, as you might have guessed, did not vote for Trump.
Right.
All of them uniformly wrote them off as like bigots. And I was like, okay, they clearly hate me. They don't respect me. And they had mixed feelings about my trans identity. And recently I've decided I need to talk to them. I need to hear from them what they're afraid of. And the three family members in particular had totally different things that were worries for them. One of them lives in Charlotte, doesn't feel safe in his neighborhood, and nobody wants to listen to him. Nobody cares that he doesn't feel safe in his neighborhood. Only the Republicans are willing to say, you don't feel safe in your neighborhood. What are we going to do about it? Even if their solutions are bad and wrong and stupid.
And racist.
He was struggling with safety in his neighborhood. My other uncle had his manufacturing plant closed down, has a lot of anger about money in politics, and doesn't quite understand how some people are bringing more money to politics than others, and doesn't really trust any politicians. And I was able to connect with him about, I hate it when politicians interfere with my life too. He doesn't have to care about me being trans. He doesn't need to be a rock star trans ally. He needs to understand that we both lose when there's dark money in politics and when politicians make choices for us. Being willing to sit with somebody and realize that I don't need you to understand exactly why I identify as trans, because I don't understand exactly what it means to be, to work in a manufacturing plant in rural North Carolina. I don't understand what it is to be a disaffected white man. I don't have to get it to say, you seem really depressed and isolated. I care about that. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we're fighting with tulpas of each other because a lot of times, thank you. The big thing is that I have noticed, and I'm sure maybe now that this is a Russian bot situation, is that they treat it like, at least a lot of the Trump people I see, they treat it like sports, where Trump is their guy and Biden and Obama are our guys. And a lot of what has been successful for me is saying those people haven't been. Obama hasn't been president in 10 years. Biden, I don't care about Biden. Like, I'm not trying to win as a sports team. I can't do everything around here. Deadlines are slipping. I can't just do it all on my own. I need to hire someone. I needed an editor. And I was scrounging. How am I going to find an editor? It was a chaotic mess over here. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I have personally used Indeed for years. I actually have been hired for 2 jobs off of Indeed. I was able to match my skills with jobs in my area. The only 2 times that I have been hired without any sort of in with the company was through Indeed. So I was pretty stoked to find the people I needed for this podcast, and also to know that I could do that on a place where I have been hired. And if you're looking to hire someone, let's say you're the job looking to hire me, you can use Indeed sponsored jobs as a boost whenever you need to find quality talent. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. That's cuckoo bananas. And so, speaking as someone who has been on both sides of the hiring spectrum, Indeed has helped me in real life spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
You're on a GLP-1, but now you're wondering, how do I manage my side effects? What do I eat to stay strong? Because reaching your weight loss goals can take more than meds. That's where Weight Watchers Med Plus comes in. Get access to trusted experts, food plans that work with your body, and habit coaching to keep you on track. Plus access to GLP-1 medication. Get started at WeightWatchers.com. All medical services are provided through our affiliated medical group, Weight Watchers Clinic. Medications require eligibility and prescription. Individual results may vary. See site for more details.
I had I don't have a car, so I take ride shares. Although mostly the bus. But when I am in a ride share, I will sometimes talk to people, and it comes up because I take the ride shares to a lot of political stuff. So, sometimes someone will say, one time a guy said, "Where are you going?" And I said, I was going to a rapid response. And I was like, I'm going to where ICE is picking people up. So I'm just going to go and check it out. And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't like what they're doing and whatever." And he was from another country, and he was like, "Well, nobody cared about this happening to us when Biden and Obama were in office." And I was like, "Oh, baby boy, I don't care about Biden or Obama. I think all politicians are bad." Like, I was like, "Baby, we're on the same side here." Like, and then he was like, "Oh, that makes sense." That was the first time, because in his mind, he thought, that I'm wearing like that I got a tattoo of Biden Harris on my tramp stamp. Like, what are you talking about? I've had success in real life with them coming at me thinking I'm going to defend the Democrats, and they have a fundamental misunderstanding because they believe Trump is their guy. And I'm like, no. And then also part of it is me saying, have you never learned about something bad that was going on and then decided you didn't like it? I didn't know when that was happening. And now I learned about it and I don't like it. Surely that has happened to you in your life. And then they're like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, I love getting to surprise people with how
Hmm.
I am being like a normal trans person that's not like,
Well, you want kids to be, like they have these, like, you want all kids to be forced to trans. I'm like, babe, what? No, that's not what I want. And
hmm
then they go, oh, you're being really reasonable because they've probably seen bots who are not reasonable.
yes, exactly. There's this expression I absolutely love that says, we can't deny others the dignity of complexity.
Yeah,
I have to let somebody be real. I have to recognize they're being radicalized by forces outside of their
right.
control. They have things they're afraid of. They're allowed to make mistakes and be wrong about stuff, just like I am. I
Hmm.
have ways that I have embarrassed myself, that I have failed to live up to my own values, and I have grown past that.
Right.
The person across from me is an entire human being. They are complicated, doesn't absolve them of bad behavior. But if I can see them and align on, like, oh, we both care a lot about women's sports. Like the big thing I'll do if somebody, especially if they're a person that I like have an actual relationship, I'll be like, hey, actually, fairness for women's sports is really important to me. My sister is an elite college athlete. I see all the time how she's treated worse than her male peers. And I'm doing something for fairness for women's athletes. I'm going to the opening of a new women's sports bar to support women's sports. Do you want to come? And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, I'm not making it me against you. I'm giving somebody the golden gate of retreat. I'm giving them
Hmm.
a different way to live their values while allowing them to feel good about themselves the entire time. If I can protect somebody's ego and just show them a different way to live their values, I'm shocked constantly by how far I'm able to get people to go if I'm not trying to get them to admit they're a bad person. You
Right.
know, that I'm racist, I'm transphobic, I'm these things. Nobody's going to admit that about themselves who is really far down that pipeline. But
Yeah.
I can say, hey, you view yourself as someone who cares a lot about fairness, right? You say that merit is really, really important to you. Let's talk about that. I wonder if there are ways that we can help people. If you feel like I want people to get the jobs they deserve, what if you and I get involved in career coaching? What would it look like for you to help
Exactly.
people who don't have the skills they need get into these jobs? They
Exactly.
can live their values in a way that will then start to change their perspective. Like behaviors can change perspectives. I
Hmm.
don't always, it's harder to change beliefs than it is to change behaviors.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting too, where people just, when you get into the weeds, they don't know.
Yeah.
I have a Spanish tutor, and he was like, didn't they figure out that this athlete was trans? Because he had heard the story up to a certain point. And I was like, no,
Mm.
she ended up being cis. And he was like, what? No. And then I was like, Google it. And he was like, oh. And like he had only heard the story up to a certain point, or someone was arguing with me about it, about trans women in the, because the Olympics just banned trans women and also
hmm
is requiring sex testing for women, which I'm like, how do you not see that this is so anti cis women as well? But he
hmm
was arguing with me, and I was like, a trans woman has never medaled at the Olympics ever. And he was like, what? And I was like, they have never medaled at the Olympics ever. And I was like, so what we're doing is harming cis women because of something that's never happened. And he was
Yes.
like, oh.
And it's too like reminding people that we've tried sex testing at the Olympics before. They used to do that.
Yeah, there was suicide. Someone killed themselves.
First, it was nude parade. First, women were allowed, and then women started winning, and the men were so insecure they said, "We're not competing unless you make the women compete somewhere else." So that's how we got women's Olympic sports, was because men were embarrassed they were losing. And then they were like, "We need to make sure you're really a women." Nude parade, publicly available event where you would go to the stadium and every woman would walk through completely naked to prove that she was a woman. And like all of her co-competitors, all the men, all the whoever, anyone could come and watch the nude parade. So the women would go and be nude. And then they were like, well, that's dehumanizing. Let's just sex test them instead. So then people kept finding out they were intersex and they did not want to have that information. And then someone really tragically committed suicide because she was not ready to get that information about herself. Or, you know, I don't know the whole story there. But so we stopped doing that because we realized it didn't fucking matter and it was hurting all the women competitors. It wasn't necessary.
And they can't, if they find out they're intersex, there's certain countries that they can't go back. That was like a big part
hmm
of it because the country has regressive laws about, trans and stuff like that, even though many intersex people don't identify as trans. So it's like very, just the world is more complicated. And so my take on that with these people I was speaking to was like, so we're going to punish all women for something that's never happened?
Mm-hmm.
Some people then pivot, which was very funny. They'll pivot. They'll be like, well, this trans woman won in this high school. And I would be like, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Olympics. Stay on the Olympics. So it is interesting. Then, I think it sucks for the burden to be as such, but I think the right makes a lot of money. We've talked about this on this show. The left being portrayed the way it is, there's not really a lot of money in that, and there's not a lot of money in progressive values, but there's so much money in fear-mongering and protective, quote-unquote, conservative values. And I often am like, God, if I became a right-wing trans person, do you even know how rich I would be? I may be making so much money.
Strategy-wise, the right they're so great at overcoming imposter syndrome, right? Nobody on the right ever wonders, am I qualified to do this job? They just say, well, nobody else is running for my school board who believes in my values, so I'm going to fucking do it, even though I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And one phrase you will never, ever hear from somebody on the right is, I don't owe you education. Educate yourself. Google is free. If you want to learn what they care about, they will fucking sit with you as long as it takes to help you understand. They are so much, as fucked up as this sounds, they are so much more welcoming of people asking complicated questions, of people feeling weird, of people needing time, all that. They say open arms, baby. Come on in. And now what I'm not saying is that, like, okay, trans people, you got to open it all up, like offer everything, be totally patient, answer everything. No, we do not have to do that. But I do not need to be friction on somebody's journey to allyship. Because if I make somebody feel bad for asking, that's psychologically base level animal brain. That's punishment. If I feel embarrassed about something, that's punishment. I'm not going to ask again. If we say Google is free, guys, Google is broken. If you Google, I'm Christian and my child is transgender, the top 10 results are sponsored conversion therapy websites. Even the websites from organizations we agree with, if you look up what is non-binary, every single one of them has a different definition.
It's confusing.
It's hard to be a brand new ally. So if you don't want to answer the question, great, good, no problem at all. Create on your phone your no list. Your favorite resources, your top 5. You want a trans personal story of a trans woman? Awesome. Watch Will and Harper. I think you'll really like it. You want to know about my relationship with my parents? Hey, why don't you check out a PFLAG meeting and talk to some people who are really going through it? You want basic vocabulary? Check out He, She, They by Skylar Baylor. Amazing book going over a lot of the fundamentals. We can give people those resources to say, thank you for asking. I'm not the right person. Here you go. Just keep moving them along. We don't need to kick somebody and then say, why aren't you learning more? Everybody who is going to perfectly and independently educate themselves has already done so. And now we are left with everybody else. So how are we going to get through to them? It's not enough to be right. We have to be right and win.
I often will say, I'll answer, and then I'll go, don't ask anybody else.
Yes, exactly.
It's also interesting within our own community how little we know about each other.
Yeah.
I used to say I primarily hang out with cis gay men. I don't anymore. But it was quite an interesting thing in what they would ask me. Because I would be like, wow, you really don't know anything about trans people, huh?
Yeah.
Fascinating. There's like so many funny ones that I've talked about on Instagram and stuff. But like, you know, I've talked about how one guy said, I said, oh, I had top surgery. And he was like, oh, wow, so you have a penis. And I was like, no. And I had top surgery. And then he was like, yeah, surgery to be a top. And I was like, incredible. No notes. I was like, you don't get this. I'm sorry. I love lesbians. You don't get this kind of beautiful cultural exchange with lesbians. Mwah, 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 chef's kiss.
Oh my God. That is unbelievable.
Also, like, I'm a troll. This is also like funny to me, but I think it's a privilege. Obviously, it's a privilege that I think it's funny, but like, I was on a kickball team, gay kickball team, and there was like a couple lesbians on it, mostly cis gay men. And we were out at the bar after a game, and one of the girls was like, I don't know how drunk people were. One of the girls was like talking to us in a group, and she was like, did you guys know there's a trans guy on our team? And I watched my friends who are cis like buttholes pucker. And I was like, who do you think it is? She was like, I don't know. And I was like, and then my one friend was like, well, if the person chooses to say this person, she was like falling all over himself. And then my other friend, who's a cis guy, was like, it's me. And I was like, this is so funny. And she was like, oh my God, really? And he was like, yeah, it's me. But he was like smirking. So everyone was like, Eric, stop. And then he was like, no, it's me. And then we were like, oh, who do you think it is? And then there's one guy on the team who is like shorter and he's got a big butt. And so she was like, is it you? And he was like, this happens to me once a week. And then she could not figure it out. And then another guy walked up and like was talking to us for a little bit, like joining her in the transvestigation. And he was like, oh, I have a guess. And he was like, is it you? And I was like, it is. And she was like, what the fuck? And he was like, I thought so because of your voice. And I was like, woo! And then she was like, I would have never. And I was like, this is so fun for me. But then the guy I was like, this happens to you once a week? And he was like, literally, like once a week. I was like a little drunk. And I was like, I feel like you can say the T slur. I feel like if this happens to you once a week, I've knighted you and you're allowed. And he was like, I won't, but thank you.
He has T-boy swag. I love a
I
cis
know.
man with T-boy swag.
Right? He was like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me, but it's just kind of funny that it happens so often.
That's so iconic.
You got a really nice butt, and we're known for that.
Wow. Okay, when I was in college, when I first got to college, I was not planning on telling anyone that I was trans.
Yeah.
Literally 2 days in. I wasn't on T yet, but I like looked very androgynous. I looked like an 11-year-old boy, which
Incredible.
like I was pulling it off.
Yeah.
And I'm hanging out in a group of like 20 other kids, and an alarm on my phone goes off. And I go, oh, time to take my birth control. And everybody looked at me and they were like, the fuck? And I panicked and I wasn't ready to come out. So I was like, yep, I'm in an experimental trial for male birth control. And I was at Brandeis, which is a college of fucking nerds. Everyone at that college was weird in high school, but that's okay here, which meant that nobody there was like, okay, cool, whatever. They were all like, great. What's the dose? Who's running the study? What are the impacts? How big is the sample size? And I was like, fuck. So then, greatest improv exercise of my life, I get grilled about male birth control, and I'm just digging and digging and digging. They then all go out and tell fucking everybody. They tell all of their friends, oh my God, because they're also all liberals. So male birth control is very exciting as a conceptual thing that might exist in 2017. So then random ass people are coming up to me being like, you're the male birth control guy. And I was like, oh, Jesus fuck. So people are asking me for like a week, how's the trial going? Any updates? What's going on? They're getting so hopeful. So finally, I'm back with this group of people, and they're like, "Hey, so how's the trial going?" And I was like, "Oh, study got canceled. Study's over. It's done." And they were like, "Brilliant. Oh, why?" And I said, "Unexplained hair growth." Because
that's brilliant.
I had no hair because I was like, what's something I could say that they will feel too uncomfortable to ask any follow-up questions on?
Yes.
And that was the only thing I could think of.
That whole arc is brilliant. That's brilliant. See, when people write trans characters, I'm like, you don't even know the funniest things that have ever happened to us.
Literally.
You have no idea.
Our lives are hilarious.
Hilarious. Well, I've written about this, but I worked at a pet store, and the amount to which probably 45 times, I didn't even think about this when I got the job, probably 45 times a day, someone would come in with their dog, and I'd be like, oh, you looking for a collar? Like, here's the collars. And then I'd be like, this one's cute. And then it'd be like, yeah, but it's pink. I don't want people to think he's a girl. 45 times a day, I heard someone say, I don't want people to think he's a girl. And I was like, wow, I truly did not anticipate how often I would hear that sentence. And then I would say, I get it. And then they would just be like, they would not, like, there was no.
That's a joke for audience of one.
Exactly. I would just turn on gay guy. So it became that. But then that also became weirdly microaggression, where someone was like, you know who you really remind me of? One, they would say Christian Siriano, which I'd be like, all right. And then, well, the glasses and I guess the faggotry.
Okay, fine.
And then two, they'd be like, have you ever heard of this? Not the older people, but sometimes the younger people would say, do you ever heard of this drag queen Gottmik? I'd be like,
I don't
And they'd
know
be like,
that.
you kind of remind me of Gottmik, a trans guy drag queen. I'd be like, that's crazy. The only one I think is really funny is when they say Jack Antonoff, which that I can get. I think that's very funny.
Okay. I
Because
see
I'm
it.
like, okay, at least that's like, I'm like, that's probably anti-Semitic in some way, but it's totally fine, I guess. It was very, very interesting what people will say to your face when they're not, these people, maybe some of them voted for Trump because it was that kind of area, but they never, I don't know. The I can tell crowd really cannot tell.
No, they cannot at all, actually.
There was a woman in a really ornate MAGA hat, like white with gold tassels, like really ornate.
Wow.
And yeah, and I was walking my dog who's a Chihuahua, and she like stopped me and was like, "Oh my God, your dog is so cute." And I didn't, but I wanted to be like, "Thank you so much. I'm trans and he's Mexican." I only thought of it afterwards. Ah,
That's devastating to realize there's a better joke you could have said.
right?
I had in college once, I came out to someone at a party, like a girl that I was friends with, and I was like, I have to tell you, I'm trans. And she was so drunk. She put her hands on the side of my face and she said, "Thank you for telling me. You're going to be a beautiful woman someday."
Yes! How often does that happen?
Oh, God, that is the most validating shit I've ever heard. Not to be binary about it, but thank you.
It's really funny. My dad is in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he often talks about how there's this thing in Alcoholics Anonymous that we are not a glum lot, which means that
Ooh.
our circumstances and situation and being in Alcoholics Anonymous, you would think these people are humorless or, really sad and down on their luck and really just like going through it, which like they
Yeah.
are. But I think that's something that could be translated to queerness or transness, because I do think there is a big push, and there's also a big, probably from those Russian bots, idea that everything is serious. We're going to yell at you. There's like
Yeah.
we're pissed all the time. We're pissed at, everything is an aggression, like all this stuff. And I think that we don't hear or talk a lot about how things are funny. Like oftentimes I'll say something about something like that happening, and a cis person will be like, "I am so sorry." And I'm like, why? It was fucking hilarious.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know what that has to do with. I guess it comes back around to like we have a sense of humor.
Yes. And it breaks down the fear that people have to engage. A lot of people, when I got into public speaking 7 years ago, I thought they were going to be like angry and hateful and say all this inappropriate shit. And instead I found that they like apologized constantly. They were like, "Oh, I'm sorry if I can't ask this. I'm sorry if it's too personal." Regular ass people are so scared to say or ask anything. So they just don't bother because they're so afraid to. So when I give a speech, one of the first things I do strategically is make a self-deprecating joke. I talk about how I'm bad at computers. I trip over something, all very intentional to say, look, I can make fun of myself. I am not the person you are prepared for me to be. I'm not here to yell at you. I'm a normal person. I am funny. I am nice. I'm approachable. And breaking that bubble of like the stereotype and I think the really effective disinformation that people on the left are angry all the time and that they don't want to talk to you and that everything is a microaggression and that breaking that bubble is so important for making people willing to talk to me and see me as a person and let me see them as a person.
And you're in a space where you've made that clear. Like you're in a space of I'm giving a speech, I'm here at an event or something. So it couldn't be more of an open door in that regard. An average person on the street, maybe not. But someone like me who has made themselves available, if you're coming at it, I can also tell if you're coming at it innocently.
Yes.
It's so funny. I do trivia at like a gay sports bar, and it was one of the categories 2 weeks ago was comedians. And so they put up a picture of Susie Izzard and the category, comedians. And so most people wrote Eddie Izzard. And then on our sheet, I was the only trans person in the group. On our sheet, we wrote Susie Eddie Izzard and turned it in. And then I was like, I'm not going to complain. But then my friend went up and was like, hey, like, I know you gave everyone points for this. And, but also I was like, go up there and then we'll be the only ones who get points because this guy will be so fucking scared because he'll be so fucking scared he did something wrong so publicly. And then I took a picture of myself and I made like little things that I was crying and I wrote high tops WeHo equals transphobic, and I said show him this and say if he doesn't get all their points off and only give us points, I'm posting this. My friend was like dying laughing. I was like, go hold it hostage. Like say like, look at my friend who has so many followers. We didn't do it, obviously. I was joking at the table. But I was like, made this little graphic and then I was like, go say my friend has almost 300,000 followers, and if you don't take away their points and give us points for not dead naming Susie Azard, we will post this. High Tops WeHo trivia canceled. Transphobic. Look at me crying, but it's just MS Paint tears.
That's so funny.
Yeah, because like I was like, yeah, go use that against him. Say my trans friend is so upset.
He couldn't even come up here. He's so broken
exactly.
up about
and then we'll win trivia.
Trans people can be funny. Cis people, as long as I can tell you mean well, you can be funny too. It's okay. Come and be funny. Come and ask questions and play with us. We're not scary, I promise.
Exactly. And I've also opened that door myself. But yeah, it was actually interesting because my cis friend said, doesn't she go by another name? And I went, oh, we're in business, buddy. Well, thank you so much for joining us for a fun episode. Where can my audience find you and your work?
Yeah, the best way to find me is on my Substack, Good Queer News. That's where I'm on the most regularly. Allegedly, I'm on Instagram as pseudo.bro, pseudo.bro, because I'm your trans older brother. You can also find my book, My Child is Trans, Now What? If you have an adult in your life that is not doing great about trans identities or that wants to do even better, that is a great resource to help somebody get there. And it was about time an actual trans person wrote that book. So those are the main places to find me. And also I'm around. I travel for speeches. So check my social media. Maybe I'll be giving a presentation in your neighborhood.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Don't give up hope, everybody. It is tempting, but it's fake. Your despair is a trap. Don't let them win.
I love that. Thank you for listening to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. This is a noted bisexual production, edited by Allie Mims. Logo art by Dakota Becker. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the Substack, 1000naturalshocks.substack.com. The Substack has episodes of this show ad-free and also videos and also my original writing. It would mean so much to me if you would subscribe, even as a free subscriber. But a paid subscriber really allows me to keep doing this work, and I can't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, love you. Bye.